Let's face it, cyber attackers have the advantage. ExtraHop is on a mission to help you take it back. Regain the upper hand with security that can't be undermined, outsmarted, or compromised. When you don't have to choose between protecting your business and moving it forward, that's security uncompromised. See how it works in the full product demo, free online at securityweekly.com/extrahop. Wide-scale adoption of cloud applications, an increase in remote workers, and expansion of branch offices has rendered the centralized, on-premises security model impractical. Enter Cisco Umbrella. Umbrella now includes secure web gateway, firewall, and cloud access security broker functionality, plus integration with Cisco SD-WAN, all delivered from a single cloud security service. It helps businesses of all sizes secure their network and extend protection to roaming users and branch offices. Security doesn't have to be complicated. Get simple, smart, and powerful security with Cisco Umbrella. Visit securityweekly.com/Cisco Umbrella to learn more. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. The Cyber Risk Alliance, in partnership with InfraGard, has launched the Critical Infrastructure Resilience Benchmark Study. Measure your readiness for ransomware by completing the survey and getting your score by visiting securityweekly.com/CIRB. Security Weekly Unlocked will be held in person this December 5th through the 7th at the Hilton Lake Buena Vista. We're excited to announce our first round of speakers, which includes Leslie Carhart, Dave Kennedy, Alyssa Miller, O'Shea Bowens, Maria Chinavada, Patrick Coble, Chris Eng, Eric Escobar, Nick Leghorn, Kevin Johnson, and so many more. Visit securityweekly.com/unlocked to register today. On to the Enterprise Security News. Talk about some startup funding. You want to lead in with some startup funding?
Sure.
I thought there was some interesting rounds. There is a company called Hook Security. This was in South Carolina Research Authority, announced a $250,000 investment in Hook Security. They also received an additional investment in May, bringing it to a $500,000 backed startup that is in the business of launching, measuring, and automating cybersecurity phishing tests, which is a pretty crowded market and pretty advantageous. Like, they better have a good hook to, you know.
Hey-oh. I don't think we've ever talked about a raise that small, actually.
Yes.
I sometimes
go deep into my sources to pull out funding that may not land in the major headlines that I normally check. So
yeah, and that's good. And you know, I mean, I'm not slamming small raises because those are some of the more interesting ones. You know, because they're very strategic or not trying to grow at all costs. Like,
right.
Oftentimes those will end up being the more interesting ones.
Yeah, and it's not a secret. I mean, I use Crunchbase and I go, filter and find latest cybersecurity funding and through the filters and all that stuff, and then I dig through, and you gotta weed some out. Like, some are like physical security, some are more like fraud prevention. Which, nothing against those industries, but I want a slightly narrower focus. And I thought the Hook Security was interesting because I believe it's such a crowded market, and I have discussions where I'm like, how much difference is there? And I know people who are in this, particular vertical might be up in arms, but like, what are your differentiators? What's so much, better or different about one security awareness phishing simulation vendor versus another? Deb mentioned KnowBe4, they do some of that. I mean, there's a whole host of vendors. What are the major differentiators between them? When I ask people, most people are like, as long as you got one, like, you're good. Like, find the one you get a best relationship with, which I find is very interesting.
Well, then add to that too the fact that how much differentiation can you build in from a technical perspective for $500,000 and still get the word out about your company?
Yeah, agreed. Tyler with his marketing hat on, go-to-market strategy, right? It's a great point, though.
I mean, even if you let's say you just took half of it to build a better product, to build a better mousetrap, which probably takes way more than $250K. Let's say you pull it off with $250K. How do you even get the word out about it? That's why you don't ever see investments this small, because this just gets you to product market fit, and then you have to go get another one.
Yes. Yeah. You're going to have to raise to build that next AI ML engine that's going to present like far better phishing results and campaigns based on the company's data, which I'm sure some of the other players in the market already do.
Yeah, and it looks like Hook is going after. looks like Hooks is going after SMB, so they're going to need some kind of partner, some kind of channel.
Yeah.
The smallest I ever see from an investment standpoint is $1 to $3 million in the pre-seed stages.
If you want to play an enterprise, Adrian brings up a good point.
Yeah,
if you partner.
Yeah, if you want to play in enterprise. I guess if you want to play in SMB and do something super small with limited differentiation, you could enter that market.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they start out at $40 a month for up to 25 users.
Interesting.
That's pretty cheap. Yeah.
Yeah, like I can afford to train my kids at $40 a month. Jeez.
Right. Yeah, kind of interesting. Hunters raises $30 million in a Series B round to drive innovation, enhance customer satisfaction, and recruit more talent in the XDR space. It's an Israeli-based startup founded in 2018. They provide a turnkey data and security platform that aids effective detection and rapid response to security incidents.
And we're going to be looking at it next month.
Oh, nice. Good. I'm glad they're on the list.
Yeah. I've already had a conversation with their CEO, Yuri May, and he has given me the best definition for XDR so far.
Oh,
or the best explanation.
What a great little nugget of information Adrian just dropped there. Very nice.
And do you remember enough of it to share with the stupid people like me that still don't know what XDR is?
Yeah, it's not boiled down into a soundbite, but basically, it's clearly an evolution on SIM. And the interesting thing about that is most of the companies you see saying that they're doing XDR are EDR. So they're evolving from the EDR side, but it's all about boiling that data to a point where it's more useful. So there's elements of UEBA and SOAR in there also. So I think almost everybody is moving towards some capability to do automatic responses to things. In fact, we're testing vulnerability management tools right now, and even some of the vulnerability management tools have built-in SOAR type automations where they can remove a system from the network if its risk score is above a certain amount, like right after finishing a vulnerability scan, which I thought was interesting. Of course, they're doing that through like integration with carbon black response in one case I saw.
Yeah, I think to me, XDR is the topic we've always talked about. I put it in the context of my enchanted quadrants, right? Where you got to collect data from the network, data from logs from your systems, data from the endpoint, and even throw in a mix of threat intelligence on there and somehow put that together in a way where you can review incidents, look at indicators of compromise, and take actions.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, it's making SOC work suck less.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But
that's the goal of it, at least.
Yeah.
We'll find out next month if they're there.
Right, because there's a lot of ways to skin that cat, and I think that's why this space in particular, because you can even extend this capability outside of what is branded as XDR, there's so many different ways to do it because it's just such a niche thing for every organization. Some of this extends into the MDR market. Some, like, where do you put Logarithm? I would put Logarithm in that category, but I don't know if they're marketing as XDR, but they have all those components, certainly.
Yeah, Logarithm was one of the first SIMs that came out of the first generation of SIMs to really start moving more towards catering to operational workflows.
Yep.
And like they had SOAR-like functionality way back in like the mid 2000s, late 2000s, something like that. I remember looking at them and being really shocked at how far they had come along versus the ArcSights and the Envisions and all those guys.
And I think what we've seen is SOAR largely as a feature, or if it's a standalone thing you're going to go get, it's because you don't have those capabilities in your existing product suite.
Yeah, and still, the problem here is what I like to call the customization tax. Like these SIM, SOAR, like all these SOC tools, I think it's healthier to think of them as development platforms, not as fully baked products. Mm-hmm. Because when you talk to people who have just bought one, like the first questions are, okay, now what do we do with it? Like you know, what, you know, do you have playbook examples somewhere? Like most of the ones built into the product aren't that useful. You know, so it's kind of like a cart before the horse type of situation where a lot of people buy these before they know what they're going to use them for. You know, and I think that should be a lot clearer to most people before they actually make that purchase.
You need to have a game plan before you go recruit your players.
Yeah, because then you're, you know, what are you left with? You know,
right. It's the opposite. You're getting all the players, and you're like, all right, how do I make all these players work together? Right? That's a flawed strategy, in my opinion.
Oh crap! We get 30 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
What do we? They're all going to get creamed.
Now you're breeding my anxiety. I got to do this fantasy football thing, and I don't nothing. I've never done fantasy football. I mean, I kind of follow football, but not really. So yeah. I need help. Johnny's going to help me. My nephew's going to help me. Like, can I write isn't there a Python script I can write for this?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. I was invited to do some fantasy F1, so I'm kind of in the same position. I know just enough about it to make some really bad mistakes.
Is it like a pole position? Is that F1? Or is that the video? There was a video game pole position. Anyway, getting off topic.
Yeah, that's a general term, actually. You know, I think they use that term in many different racing sports. That just means like you've qualified at the top. You know, you get to start out in front.
I bet in fantasy F1 that if you qualify pole position, you probably get extra points.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I'll let you know.
Cloudflare is claiming they defended against the largest DDoS attack, or detected and mitigated, the article says. The attack sent 17.2 million requests per second to the organization's server in order to, obviously, blah, blah, blah. They're claiming it's the largest one. It's pretty interesting.
That's kind of weird. Like, everybody shares DDoS attack size. Like the metric for that, the measurement is volumetric, not quantitative. Like you always hear like certain number of terabits per second or you know, gigabits per second. I've never heard anybody talk about it in terms of requests per second.
They're stating
they've made it impossible to compare.
They're stating it was devices in 125 different countries from the Mirai botnet.
God.
Which Mirai refuses to die because there's all kinds of IoT and embedded systems hanging out there on the internet that are just ripe for. Which is interesting because if you think about it too, Mirai is like theoretically scary for a lot of reasons. You think about how much faster embedded systems or IoT devices have gotten, even in just the past 10 years. Looking at the Raspberry Pis, I had to like go look at the comparison chart, and you can see like the amount of computing power that they're putting in these tiny little devices now. As well, I mean, it's Moore's law, right? I mean, it's exponential. So, you know, utilizing these things, there are more of them, and they've got more computing power, which is amazing.
And there's a few things interesting about this. I mean, I was shocked to find out. I interviewed Derek Mankey for an SE Media thing the other day, and you know, that was one of the things that has come out in Fortinet's latest research is that Mirai is still a big deal. And I just hadn't heard about it in a while, so I was kind of shocked that it was, because it set some original records for volumetric attacks. You know, that Akamai absorbed some of that. You know, took Dyn down. I think that was shortly before Oracle acquired them, I think. But Dyn was provided so much DNS, it took down large chunks of SaaS products in the internet at the time. And back then, Mirai was like 200,000, 300,000 devices strong. And now it's hitting with bigger attacks, but only with a fraction of that, with only 20,000 devices. So these must be much beefier devices.
Well, I think also it's probably different style of DDoS, right? So if you're talking about volumetric,
could be, yeah.
Like, you know, large packet kind of network layer bandwidth crushing style DDoS, that's very different than I think this one, which is RPS based, which you could have a request if it's targeting like a search bar or something that's open but chews up a fair amount of compute in the target. and you can hit that with fast enough RPS, you could knock down the entire system that way too, without having to volumetrically clog the pipes, right? So I think you were right in the opening statements when you talked about comparing apples and oranges. That could be what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, they've had 3 years to optimize how it takes stuff down, right? So all kinds of research.
I mean, you got the pipe clogging, then you've got the memory chewing, you've got the CPU chewing style, right? So they're all different style of DDoS.
Yeah.
I was trying to unpack this security scorecard and Tenable integration. They say that Security Scorecard will deploy its real-time visibility services into Tenable's analytics and cyber monitoring services. And I thought Security Scorecard was primarily a third-party kind of play. But are you bringing in third-party data, or is it changing, right? So is that it's just more vulnerability data that's being plugged into Tenable through Security Scorecard?
They're doing actual risk and vulnerability scoring and taking into account mitigating factors and other pieces of data like that. So if they can get data from Tenable on mitigating factors connected with the scores of vulnerabilities that are already in there, they can have like a security scorecard version of risk pertinent to you as an organization. That's where they're really starting to push their research instead of just doing third-party style stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like the security scorecard data comes into the Tenable console.
That's right.
That gives you, because it's that problem that vulnerability vendors have always struggled with. How do I prioritize 200,000 vulnerabilities that I just discovered yesterday? How do I prioritize it? That's the play.
Well,
absolutely. That's where Security Scorecard is getting deeper and deeper. They're doing much more, big data analytics, ML, AI kinds of things to get more accurate quantitative measures of risk.
It's all answering that question. What do I fix first?
Right. So one of the interesting things here is this could be kind of like a attack surface management play for Tenable.
Sounds like
it. But like the big gulf between attack surface management, what Security Scorecard is doing, and what some of the traditional vulnerability management products are doing is an asset is still very much something that's tied to an IP, or it's some kind of computing resource. It's not a DNS name. It's not a code repo somewhere. So we've got this kind of new idea of what an asset is, and the vulnerability management companies haven't made that leap yet.
They will. They have to, because everything's going software-defined, cloud-native, digital transformation. All of that is pushing the definition of asset into something that it doesn't. It has to be very, very different than what it has been historically. And so I think you'll see the vuln management systems move towards that direction as well.
And this could have been that, but I don't think it is. It looks like it still has to be something on the Tenable side, that has an IP attached to it, or that it's enriching stuff that your Tenable scans have found, right?
Yeah, that's been a struggle. I mean, having worked in VM, right? The scanners traditionally were based on IP addresses and domain names, and it was always a challenge architecturally, because like Nessus, when Renault was 18, he wrote Nessus, everything had to have an IP address, and that architecture carried through. And I think they've been working slowly to shift that architecture, but it's really hard because the core of it wants an IP address.
That's absolutely right. And I think what you're seeing is the beginnings of that transformation, both in cyber asset management, vulnerability management, as well as scoring, right? Risk scoring and quantification.
Well, and on top of that, there's kind of a new way of looking at devices and assessing risk from them. Like one of the things I found really interesting when we did the attack surface management review was, one company would float to the surface websites that had old copyright dates on it. So if at the bottom of the web page it says copyright 2008, it looks like it might be an abandoned website domain host, infrastructure. So that's it's not a vulnerability. It's not something any kind of scanner would come back and say this is vulnerable to an exploit or something like that. But it kind of comes across as a really good way of identifying something that's been forgotten about, which is going to have risks in it. Maybe you don't have to find the vulnerabilities. All you need to know is this thing is abandoned and should be taken down. Like forget thinking about vulnerabilities. Just reduce your attack surface. Get rid of the stuff that nobody's using anymore. And that actually goes into one of my stories.
Yeah, go for
it. So there's is it TinyCheck? It's not TinyCheck. Google Cloud launched a tool, I guess it is, called Unattended Project Recommender. Kind of a like that's a mouthful. Kind of an unwieldy name there, but it's a feature of, and AWS kind of has this concept also. Like they also have a product, and I'm blanking on the name of it right now. Maybe one of you can remind me. But it basically makes recommendations to you. It looks at what you've got in your cloud and says, hey, you're doing something stupid, or this isn't optimal. And that's one thing I love about Google Cloud. I think one of the first times I used Google Cloud, I deployed an appliance into it. And after a month, it was like, hey, you're using too big, of a compute resource for this. Like you could actually downgrade this and save some money, for what this resource is using. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. So the idea behind this is using machine learning. It can kind of figure out, you're not using this anymore. Nobody's using this. It's kind of abandoned. Maybe you want to think about shutting this down.
Yeah, I like that, because I feel like even still today, that old kind of pen tester methodology of going, I want to go after the stuff that they probably don't know about or has just been hanging around and no one's paying attention to. There's a lot of good reasons why attackers will go after that, and we see that with data breaches today as well, because if it's not actively being worked on, maybe it's not actively being monitored. Also, if it's not being worked on, it's not being updated. Maybe it doesn't have the latest security protections they've been putting into the newer applications or systems. So discovering that is hard, and tools that can help me with that is great. And I like the tools in the cloud too, because you may have spun stuff up in the cloud and it just works. And you're like, oh yeah, I should probably update that, but it's just working. And I think a lot of us are in that same boat.
Yeah, I can't wait for them to turn this on for my code, because I have been getting charged literally 2 cents a month for like 7 years on a project, and I can't figure out how to turn it off. So I'm waiting for them to auto delete it for me.
Right.
That's funny.
That's really funny.
Yeah, I'm terrible about that too. Like I'll use AWS for some project or a workshop or something like that, and just take my eyes off it. And 2 years later, that crap is still running, and I've been getting charged $30-$40 a month for it.
It's not Amazon Inspector. Was that the one you were thinking about?
No, it's like Cloud Wizard or something like that. I forget what it's called.
It's the most frustrating thing in the world, though, Adrian, to get charged 2 cents a month. 2 cents, right? $40. I'll find it. 2 cents is not worth me to find it.
Right. Let's see. So Sumo Logic, we talked about that in the teaser for the show. So they obviously did acquire DFLabs, but now they're making a product announcement. So they've actually done something to help integrate and bring that product to market in a unified manner. So, if you're a Sumo Logic customer, now is probably a good time to go, hey, look at the SOAR component. Back to our previous discussion about, SOAR being a feature. I think this is a prime example. Also, what was the other one I wanted to cover? Oh, Blue Mira raised $10.3 million. We missed one when we were talking about raises.
Yeah. So, sorry, I jumped over to this other one just because it was, the idea of getting rid of abandoned stuff was just similar. But yeah, I've got that one in mind as well. Yeah, it's a good size Series C.
It's a cloud-based SIM is how they're positioning it. Could that really be like the XDR play? Really?
Oh, this is I was looking at a different one. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. This was a Blue Mira Series A.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, clicked on the wrong tab. Yeah, it's interesting. so John Oberheid of Duo Security is behind this one, which was kind of confusing because one of the reports I said Duo Security was one of the investors. It didn't mention it was someone, one of the co-founders of Duo. I was like, how does that work? They were acquired by Cisco a couple of years ago. They can still make independent investments. Isn't that Cisco Ventures? But yeah, no, it's him personally. And it's always interesting to see, leaders in the cybersecurity vendor space, kind of put what they put up their own money on. So it does seem kind of late to market, so they must have something, fairly special in this space. Are you familiar with this one, Tyler?
I'm not, but what caught my eye is it's Ann Arbor based. So of course, John was going to jump all over that, right? It's in his backyard. Even if it's, semi-differentiated, and maybe the only differentiation is that it's tools designed specifically for mid-market companies. And if that's the case, maybe he's like, hey, there's a gap in market there that there doesn't need to be any technical differentiation or limited technical differentiation. There might be, but maybe there isn't.
It seems like there, and John's a really smart guy, right? My guess is there might have been a noticeable gap where MDR starts to fall off, and you're not quite ready for a full enterprise SOC, and there's this kind of mid-market play that needs a really good, easy-to-deploy solution, which Blue Mirror has. I mean, it's really a very user-friendly, quick. When it says it's turnkey, I mean, it really is. That's one of their goals, is to make deployment very, very easy and have some usability there. So.
Yeah, I mean, SIEMs are traditionally very heavy, very, very labor intensive. So yeah, I would expect something like this to have a ton of features crammed in and to be a lot easier to use, a lot simpler to use. And the funny thing is, like, if you get that formula right, then, down the road, Series Z, you're going to be great for the enterprise too.
Yeah. Or go towards the MDR market as well and get picked up by the providers. So. Have both.
Yep.
What else we got this week? Nothing else was really blah blah blah. I covered all the ones that I really wanted from my list. Adrian, I don't know if you got more on yours.
Yeah, one more. Raise Upstream raised $62 million in a Series C. They're calling it cloud-based security, but they're specifically automotive focused. I'm not terribly familiar with them, but it is interesting in 2021 to still see articles starting with a reference to Miller and Velasquez's Jeep Cherokee stunt hack.
Oh my God! Everyone talks about that. Everyone talks about that hack.
It's like
6 years later, it's still the opener.
I know. At what point is that like use something else? You got to reference something a little more recent than that.
Yeah, but I mean that was the perfect storm where they did amazing research, but it just happened to be in a vehicle that they could sit a journalist in while they did it, and that perfect storm just leads to an epic reference anytime anyone talks about automotive security. And I believe this is for autonomous vehicles. Is kind of their focus here, right?
Yeah, and it's almost like a Blue Mirror, but specifically for this vertical. So there's like a automation component, threat analysis component, threat hunting type component, visibility. Sorry, Tyler.
No, I was just going to say, I wonder exactly what it does because, the concept of hacking cars has been around, as we know, for 6-7 years based on the Chris and Charlie hacks being, let's call that one of the first ones. And fundamentally, have we really gotten any better? We're still seeing significant major car accidents. We've seen extension in the quantity of compute systems that are in every car, the bus systems. Yeah. I'm just not, I guess, anymore. Expectations are low.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's a big raise, but this is a super niche category where it's and I wonder if it's not a bit early, because totally I agree with them. Like there's tons of data coming out of these cars, all the different computing systems that they have in them, computer vision, all the different components that have to talk to one another. I wonder how evolved this is, like what that threat map looks like for where you're actually going to be looking for threats and what that data looks like. I'd be very interested to see like get a briefing on this and see like a demo of the product.
Yeah, I would too, because quite frankly, having gotten burned on mobile security, right, trying to do a lot of investment in mobile security when that was the hot thing, I see this likely maybe being the same end result, in that maybe we actually build this automotive system securely from the ground up, God forbid, and it goes the way of mobile security in the sense that nobody really uses it anyways.
Or you see like Lookout was the only big winner that I can even recall coming out of mobile security. There were so many companies that just disappeared.
Yeah,
you had Lookout and you had the MDMs, but do we need an AV for your car? Probably not if we do it right. And do we need a MDM style mobile device management or automotive device management? Maybe if we're running a fleet of cars, but certainly not on an individual basis. So I'm not sure where else you go.
Yeah, I think the investment's probably banking on the market for autonomous vehicles exploding in the next 5 to 10 years.
Absolutely,
and that being
and I think it is too.
Primary transportation, right? I mean, it's already in a lot of major cities. Where I live, it is not. But in a lot of other major cities, there is autonomous transportation that is available. I want to say San Francisco is one of them, right? And I think that's only in Vegas. And, I think also the pandemic kind of drove that shift too, where you don't want to do a ride share and have another person in the car, which is interesting.
And I think with the growth of EVs, the electric vehicle side of it is going to continue to push forward the technology that we're putting in cars rapidly enough that the automated driving systems are, they're already beginning to take place. They're just going to continue to roll out drastically, and that's where this investment is on the back of.
I just can't help but think of that Silicon Valley episode where the dude gets in the car and ends up on a container ship. He gets in an autonomous vehicle and ends up on a container ship somewhere. Did you guys see that show? No.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some emotions driving this. Like even in the article, they say, the idea of having someone hijack your car remotely and start blaring music as it crashes you into a wall is scary. And I mean, we've seen plenty of that in TV and movies and stuff like that. The future where somebody just takes over your car and starts messing with it. So I guess the buyers here are going to be operators, not necessarily manufacturers. Of these vehicles, right?
That's a great question.
Yeah, it is a good question. You talked about AV for your car, right? Does it eventually come down to the consumer? Which is interesting because safety. I mean, safety gear in cars always comes with it because it's been mandated by regulation, and your seatbelts come with your car.
I would
right?
100% argue that if it ends up being in the hands of the consumer from a security perspective to secure their own car, even if they do it, it'll never work properly because of inconsistent deployment models, etc. Right. The only way it works is if, similar to the way phones in general have done it, and that's they build it properly, securely from the ground up. So it has to happen, I guess, at the manufacturer level.
Yeah, I mean, so they're saying they currently have close to 4 million connected vehicles from 6 different OEMs on its platform across US, Europe, and Japan. So, folks are using it. So I guess I see it like what's that?
I said that could be manufacturers in certain regions, right? Like Japanese manufacturers of selling Japanese cars in Japan are using it, or I don't see it being like a consumer level deployed add-on that you would put in play.
Because I mean, mostly you're connecting your phone to your car anyway from a user experience perspective, and that's the device that interfaces with it. Or in the future, maybe Adrian's chip in his hand just automatically talks to his car.
Yeah. So they actually have them for just unlocking and starting your Tesla. There are implants specifically made to mimic those little like credit cards, that you get as like an alternate key to using your phone. But I could even see a use case for like an Uber or a Lyft. Anybody who has a large fleet of cars that wants to detect any anomalies that would suggest something funny's going on with with a large fleet. I could see being a use case for a tool like this, where they're trying to detect threats and anomalies across just a ton of telemetry data coming in from vehicles.
Cool.
They call it a VSOC, a Vehicle Security Operations Center.
A VSOC.
That sounds very cool.
It does. Anything else really cool you want to talk about?
Let's see. I had a couple I could definitely.
You can tell this was a light week for enterprise security product announcements and funding. Kind of light this week.
I've got a bunch of bizarre stuff on here.
That's what we end up doing. We end up just talking about bizarre stuff.
Yeah. So I've got like a minimalist phone, that like the idea is like some days you don't want to carry your smartphone. You want to be a little more present in whatever you're doing, or don't want, to worry about what people are putting in Slack. So there's a new minimalist phone. It's like $300. I don't know why.
Yeah, I can't
just get an old Nokia. Like why are you going to spend $300 on this?
Because the old Nokia won't take your SIM card. That's why.
Right. Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's the 3G that I think even 3G, some of them are starting to drop some of the old technologies. I know 2G is like almost gone in a lot of places. A company called Paladin publicly launched Knighthawk, a first response drone for cities. So I don't know if you guys have ever played any of these games where you can like take over drones and like screw with them. What is that game? Help me out here, guys.
I don't know the game you speak of.
Oh, it's
no clue here.
Is it a game where you take over drones?
Yes. Yeah. It's
Grand Theft Auto.
I play it, and what the heck is wrong with my brain?
Can you draw a picture? Is this like?
It'll come to me in a moment. But yeah, that's what
it's charades. It's charades. Can you act it out?
I mean, it's one of the major mechanics of this game. Somebody will pop in and remind me what it is. But one of the major mechanics is you take over surveillance cameras, and you can laterally move through cameras to drones. Drones can go to different places that people can't go. And kind of drop in from the sky. And flip switches on and off. So it's a major mechanic of the game. So every time I see something about like a non-military drone use case, I start thinking about this game because, it takes place in a future where there's drones in the sky shipping packages. There's security drones, like there's like all these different use. Yeah, Watchdogs. Thank you.
Watchdogs.
Yeah, so at least the only one I've played is the most recent one, which is Watch Dogs Legion, and that's like one of the core mechanics of the game is you're constantly taking over drones and flying them around and using them to do stuff. Like in some cases, you don't even have to like take any big risks. You don't have to risk getting shot. You can just take over a drone and have it do all the dirty work. And if it gets destroyed, you just grab another one. Hack another one, have it do your dirty work for you. So it looks like this is, we're starting to see more of these. And it's interesting because Amazon, what do they call it? Prime Air was the name of the subsidiary. Amazon created a company just to develop the drones that were going to ship packages for Amazon.
And are they still doing that today? I feel like it's something we've talked about, but
I don't think they've shut it down, but the CISO that I knew that used to be there is gone. Like all the people that I used to know that were there have all moved on. So it seems like
it's kind of
they either cut down the size of it. I think they hit maybe a road, and this is just me guessing. I don't have any inside detail, but I suspect they've hit some regulation hurdles.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see another one that's suggesting, that this is something that the city would own and maintain, and these would, so initially these drones would have like thermal cameras and stuff like that, provide intel for firefighters and first responders so that they have advanced knowledge of what they're getting into when they show up on site, like specifically where the incident is happening, so that might give them some insight on where best to park the fire, the different assets that they need to respond to the incident. So Yeah, interesting days. I'm sure somebody at some point will hack these things, and like we'll see all kinds of new drone research as we see more of these private drone products coming out.
Yeah, and if it's left up to the city or town to maintain the security of these, that could also get interesting too.
Yeah. So there's an acquisition we didn't mention. Build.security was acquired by Elastic.
I know. What is Build.security?
I wasn't familiar with them, but I think Sunil Yu, I saw him mention it. I think he was like an advisor or something like that for him.
He was. He's an advisor there, yep.
Mm-hmm. Do you know anything about the company, Tyler?
No, I believe it's centered around authentication, authorization management across devices, but honestly, I'm definitely not an expert on Build Security's business.
Okay. So yeah, interesting to see, Elastic is building out the security side of things more. I keep forgetting that they acquired Endgame. So this is their second security acquisition. So they're starting to build out the security side of their business. They also have a SIM, but they don't consider that pure play on the security side.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of use cases for log aggregation and management that aren't security related.
Very nice. Well, that will conclude the enterprise security news for this week. Kind of a light news on stories, so we got a chance to talk about bizarre stuff. Thank you, Adrian and Tyler, for the bizarre stuff conversation. Thanks, everyone, for listening and watching. See you next time on Enterprise Security Weekly.